Hey folks, Will here, welcome back to another Pokemon Masters video, and today I'm going to go over something that I probably should have went over yesterday, but I totally forgot to. I've been playing a lot of Mafia lately, so, understandable, I guess. But anyways, before we go over the news, let's just do our daily summons. It's actually pretty big news. It's regarding the sync move changes for the opponents. They actually came up, they came up with the details of that, and it's actually... it's interesting. I honestly don't have too much of an opinion on it, but you know what? I haven't seen like all the like full details on that yet. So we'll see. We'll see once I read through all of that. So did we get any? I don't think we got anything in the last poll. I think it was just a 3-star, whatever, right? I mean, no, I probably would have noticed it if it was something else. So probably was just a 3-star. Anyways, probably nothing in here as well. And that is true. Well, no, there we go. Anyways, let's go check the news now. So in the news, at the top, you will see the battle changes and difficulty adjustments. So let's just go over their text first, and then we'll discuss. In the update scheduled for late January 2020, which is probably next week, next Tuesday, right? Should be when that happens, and also when Solgaleo happens as well, right? We'll be making some design changes and difficulty adjustments to certain battles. As for design changes, when hit by an opposing sync pair's move, allied sync pair's raised stats will no longer be returned to normal. Yeah. Never mind. I thought I read a double negative there. So never mind. We're good. So, so basically, what's gonna happen is. It used to be the case that when your opponent sinks you and your team, you guys all lose your stat boost, right? You know, doesn't do anything about negatives, but you know, it loses all your positive stat boost, right? If you had like any special attack buffs, crit buffs, evasion buffs, whatever speed buffs, they're all gone, 0. They go back to 0 once your opponent sinks. So usually, you know, that means just the opponent's sync moves are incredibly powerful. Like, not only do they do usually a lot of damage, they also just take out all your buffs, right? So that's what used to happen there. And apparently, that's not going to be the case anymore. So that's definitely a win for the players, but it is a slight L for impervious sync pairs, right? Because the reason why a lot of the impervious sync pairs were really good is because, well, impervious means that their stats don't get lowered at all. So even if the opponent's sync moves, their stats aren't going to get lowered, right? So usually they should be good there. But now that it's going to happen to everyone, it's not like everyone gets impervious. It's not like impervious is completely obsolete, right? Because impervious still protects the sync pairs from any stat decreasing moves that you know your opponent might use, right? You know, if there's any snarl or whatever that tries to decrease your special attack, whatever, then you're still good for the impervious sync pair. But as for like the other stuff, it does make all the other sync pairs better, much better, right? So I don't know if they're gonna do anything to balance this, because they theoretically could, you know, try and balance this by doing stuff like, say, you know, make more challenges that actually decrease your stats, right? So they might not like completely make that sort of stuff like obsolete. So they could do that maybe. They could also just make a lot of like haze users. Haze obviously resets your stats and all that. So they could do that as well, right? Like Bryson, right? They could throw out more haze users, but again, we don't know how they're gonna balance that. We'll have to see. But at the moment, it seems that it's a big win for all the other sync pairs that aren't impervious, and it's not like all the impervious. I see a lot of people talking about this like, oh, if it's an impervious user, then it's nerfed. No, that's not true. A lot of impervious users got much better as well, right? Eevee, for example, I think Eevee got much better with this change, even though they were impervious. But now with impervious, it makes Eevee's sync move much more valuable, right? So the striker that you pass it on to, or you know, baton pass it to, they're not going to get their stats wiped out. So it's much more valuable to use that sync move to get the stat boost now, instead of, you know, what was before, right? So I think that's a win, right? Some other, you know, other impervious users. Actually, that's kind of like the biggest one. it's basically more so for support impervious supports. Actually, is that like actually Eevee's the only example I could think of. But anyways, it's a decent example, right? But it also advantages a lot of other sync pairs that, you know, more than others, right? So a few examples. Again, everyone got better, but I'm gonna throw out a few examples. Like Drake. Drake got much more useful than it was before, because for Drake, you have a sharply raises special defense to all allied sync pairs, and then increases move gauge of all allied sync pairs and by 2, and sharply raises defense of all allied sync pairs. Raising defense and special defense used to be like absolutely useless. I wouldn't say absolutely useless, but you know, fairly useless. But now that your stats aren't going to get lowered, you get more value out of the defenses, because it was the case that because like before this change, you know, happened, you know, as it is right now, you're basically, every match is like a race against the clock. You know, see if you could take out your opponents, you know, do enough damage to your opponent's Pokemon by taking them out before they sync move, because the opponent, you know, they attack fairly irregularly, right? So you know, defenses weren't as useful. Instead of throwing defenses, it's much better to, you know, just buff up all your offense and just kill your opponent as soon as possible. And that's basically, you know, how the game works. Again, I would still suspect that is the case after the update, but it would make defenses much more useful after that. So that's always good. And you know, Drake also has some other good stuff that people don't really talk too much about. Got Terrify, which is like Intimidate, right? Lowers your enemy's physical attack amount entering. And yeah, again, Drake could be more useful. Some other defense raising sync pairs like Roxanne, right? And all that stuff. So that's cool, I guess. Some more tanky users, stuff like Torkoal. That's gonna make Torkoal better, even though again, impervious, right? Actually, yeah, Torkoal got impervious anyways, so never mind. It depends on if you want to pass it on, right? If you're building like a pass it on build for Torkoal, then this change obviously helps Torkoal, right? Makes Torkoal much better for the pass it on build than it is right now, because even though you're impervious, the target that you pass on to might not be. So and Torkoal takes a long time to kill, so usually, right? So that would make pass it on much better for Torkoal. But yeah, those are some units that generally benefit through those, right? Everyone else with a stat boost basically benefits from this as well, right? Doesn't matter which striker or support you are. If you do any stat boosting, you benefit from this. So overall, most units in the game just got a straight up buff. The vast majority of them. All right, so moving on to the next set of info. So they adjusted some EX challenge difficulties, right? They said they'll be making adjustments to the difficulty of the following EX challenges. So they're doing very hard and hard for Skyla, Brock, Erica, Rosa, Barry, Flannery, Karina, and Price. What I think is going to happen is they're going to just make these really easy, like to the scale of how easy, say, like EX Marshall or what was the other? Marshall, Claire, J9. Even though stuff like Brock, Barry, Skyla, Price, even, like, they're all, Erica, right? They're all really easy. Like, the only ones that aren't super easy is probably just Flannery and Karina, right? Those you can't really auto, but all the other ones you could auto at the moment. So like, they're not hard to begin with. So they're just gonna, you know, they're basically just making everything much more easier, I guess. I would assume, right? Or it just could be, you know, just straight up adjustments, right? Because I'm pretty sure it's not gonna make them harder, because if they were to make EX challenges harder, they would include stuff like EXJ9, Marshall, and Claire in there, right? That'll make much more sense. So anyways, that's basically all the info we got over here. So some EX challenge difficulty adjustments, and we'll have the design changes. These will probably come through on the 29th, right? So that's should be also when Kiram drops. or the legendary Pokemon. Could not be Kyurem, but again, very, very likely it's going to be Kyurem. So that should be when it drops. It says late January, right? So it's Sunday right now, 25th. So in what, 2 or 3 days, right? Or 3 or 4 days. Anyways, that's me for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like and enjoy this video. Subscribe to the channel for some more Pokemon Masters content. I'll see you guys in the next one.